The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading. Well, is the monster crop being projected by USDA really out there? Record yield projections on the August reports, 183.1 for corn, 53.2 for soybeans, really has put a lot more bearish weight on the grain markets here early this week. Question is, though, is this going to come to fruition or not? Well, Professional Ag Marketing just wrapped up their 9th annual Midwest Crop Tour last week. So let's get some firsthand perspective on what things are looking like out there across the Corn Belt. Joining us now, Mike Miner with Professional Ag Marketing. He heads up that tour every year. Mike, good to talk with you again, buddy. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well.
Very well. It's good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, and hopefully have you recovered from the many, many miles you put on last week, Mike? Because you definitely attacked much of the Midwest. You put on a lot of drive time last week.
It was good. I always have a really fun time. I usually get to take the interns out, get to know them a little bit better anyways. So this is my 9th year of doing it. So it's always interesting seeing, we do the same route about every year. So seeing samples from the same spots year after year, it's pretty interesting to see the changes in areas and changes in the crop year to year.
Definitely. Well, let's talk about what you saw, and I'm going to pull up a map of your route here from this year. Mike, I got to ask, USDA, of course, predicting record yields for corn and soybeans on the latest round of reports. Is it reality? What did you find as you looked across the Corn Belt? Is that big yield potential out there for both corn and soybeans?
Yeah, I mean, I on Friday came out with a 183.3. So it was just right off the bat, I was a little bit even higher than they were. Now, I'll dive into it here. So like day one, we went south of Laverne there on the west, or on the western Corn Belt on the left side of the screen. And that Sioux Center crop was just on the outskirts, so like it was okay corn yet. Here or there, you could see some signs of excess moisture, but it was still pretty good for the most part. From a month ago, that's right out our back door, so we get to watch that crop pretty aggressively throughout the year. A month ago, it was in really rough shape. It took a month to get out of the ground and a poor start, but it's bounced back a lot in the last month. And basically from there all the way down to York, I mean, it was fantastic corn through Nebraska. Down by York, there's some hailed out fields and some struggles, but that crop still looked fantastic through Nebraska. Too much rain is usually a good thing for Nebraska, and that crop looked fantastic. But basically, when I left York all the way over to Ohio and then back on the north side of the trip through like LaPorte City and up towards Bancroft, I hadn't seen a bad cornfield that whole trip. I hadn't seen anything that wasn't good to excellent. And that would be like the only time ever, basically. It was maybe a little bit too dry. The drought map wasn't showing it yet from Missouri and Nebraska, kind of leaching up that dryness from, Kansas and Oklahoma, that stretch. But still, it hadn't shown many signs of stress yet. And they're supposed to get some rain over the next week or so here to help them out. But not many years I can go all the way from York and Nebraska, go all the way over to Ohio and back and see good to excellent corn the whole way. So when you tell me if I see Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, all at a record crop or better, it's hard for me to define a record for them, or what is okay, it's a record, but by how much. So you can see from a lot of our yield samples year over year, it was almost better at every location. That exact one there, if you're looking at that was for kind of your backyard from back in the day, north central Iowa, right by Algona. I tried going out, and that was the first time I had seen a bad cornfield. Once I get to about Wesley on our last day, Wesley, Iowa, and then headed towards more like Emmitsburg, Spencer. That's where the bad stuff was. That was the heart of, it was too wet. Now that corn sample you're looking at I went out and I tried finding a row that was really bad. I tried finding a row that was decent, average sample of the field, and then I went and found the best row I possibly could in the field, and that's my sample. So I mean, our sample pulled like a 178 out of that exact field, and you know, that's not including the zeros throughout the field, and that's probably hoping that whatever tip back is there isn't going to get worse, and we're going to fill out and have good fill. Um, that's kind of the best case scenario for that there, which that field had averaged about 219 over the past 3 years. So it's not like that's a pretty good piece of dirt. It's interesting because that example right there is about as bad as it gets on the corn crop this year.
Mhm.
That'd be, Algona, Emmitsburg, Spencer, Milford, that area going into kind of Minnesota as well. That was the heart of the problem, and we determined I think we narrowed in very well how big of a problem that spot was. So my question is, they had Iowa at 209, the USDA. That is a major corn production area through that northwestern Iowa. I'm struggling to really give them much above record. The rest of Iowa was all record. It was fantastic. I've never seen some years fill out the way they did. Like that's fantastic all the way to the end. It was really good. But I'm struggling to throw them too much through a record when some of your major corn production areas struggling that much. But what did you think looking through the pictures and the tour so far, Jesse?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, this picture up here on the video feed, that's LaPorte City, Iowa. That's Black Hawk County. That's really good dirt in east central Iowa. Look through, Illinois. This was Joy, Illinois. I mean, that crop looks pretty solid there too. I pulled a picture from Indiana as well. I mean, look, it's solid. From everything I saw on your guys' Twitter X account, some of these pictures, and I know folks can find more at professionalagmarketing.com. I mean, I'm with you here, Mike. To me, looking at some of those pictures, it's going to depend on how we finish this thing out, but weather looks pretty favorable. I mean, it's tough to argue with some of those pictures, I feel like, in terms of what's out there for corn crop potential, Mike.
And it's all going to come down to one. I pretty much figured it was a trendline or higher crop. First off, I mean, the conditions were fantastic all the way through. It's just how much. Like Illinois at 225 from the USDA is like 11 above the old record. I mean, that's a heaping order. That is a big jump. So how good is good? We're really going to have to find out here, because if we aren't above a trend line, let's just say the 181, if we're way off still, then it's probably due to the fact that we've become too defensive in our hybrid selection. Ever since 2012, we've been trying to make corn that can make it through a drought. Not necessarily, let's go make corn that if we get perfect weather, let's get the highest yield imaginable. So we've been taking steps as producers, myself included, that in a dry year, now I'll take 5 off the top end just to keep me whole through a dry year a little bit longer, or stand, with the ratios over the last few years, I want a thicker stock. Well, you start adding some of those things and it starts to take away from the top end potential of that corn crop. And we'll see, I think, in a year like this, of what this corn crop can really do with the modern technology we have. And it'll be an interesting test. But the other max variable is going to be Minnesota. Like if I had to take one and say, okay, put everything else at a record, you're 183 plus on corn yield for the US, what's the one state that we could be missing really big? And I'd probably say it's Minnesota. They had that with no change year over year. We've experienced very wet conditions through the first half of this growing season, and they have it at a 185 yield. Now, that could be like a 165 at the end of this if it doesn't finish very good. But even when I do that on the calculator, I'm still at a trend line or better. So it's very tough for me to get in a camp of, if it's 180 or 181 or 183, cool. But below that, I'm struggling. And same to the top end too. Like they had Illinois at 225. It's going to be very difficult to get this above the yield that they posted as well. So they're pretty stuck here, I think, Jesse.
Real briefly, soybeans. I know you guys mainly looked at corn. Did you get a peek at any soybean fields closely? How are things looking there across the Corn Belt?
Condition-wise, I think the soybeans looked fantastic on the route. I mean, we've got all of August or half of August left on us now, so I didn't do many yield checks at all on the crop tour. Soybeans are a little bit harder to judge for me as well. I didn't bring no hula hoop with me, but they look good. There's aphid pressure throughout the area here locally. We've noticed quite heavily. Otherwise, it looked good across the country, and the weather we're getting in August should suggest a nice soybean crop in the country as well.
Well, Mike, as we think about those latest estimates across the board from USDA and thinking about your crop tour results you saw, I know a lot of bearish weight in these grain markets as a whole right now. And what's your thoughts here as we kind of wrap up our conversation? What should producers be thinking about right now? As I know a lot of folks, they just they want to turn the quote board off. They don't even want to take a look at it right now. It's a little depressing. So, I mean, what would you tell folks as they're looking at marketing decisions, things like that right now, Mike?
Well, I'll start with the corn one. Honestly, we got a lot of good news for the corn market in yesterday's report. I thought that was very favorable for what they could have done. Before the report, if you would have told me we posted a 183.3 yield for corn and ending stocks dropped, I would have been like, wow, how many acres did they take off this crop? For them to come out, take the acres off, increase yield, and then with what we did with demand to increase exports like that, I thought was incredibly aggressive. At this point, we're not seeing that demand elevated. However, I mean, sure, if the numbers they provided are correct and we've got a US dollar that's becoming weaker, then yeah, we should see some picked up export activity, but we haven't seen it yet. So for them to go out and do that, I thought was aggressive to drop ending stocks like that on corn. The soybean side, that balance sheet looks rough. They're at 560 million bushel ending stocks. They increased acres a million acres. They increased yield. They barely raised demand, but honestly, that export number could be a lot worse. I thought. And the same on the crush side too, with not a lot of plants running with their construction on schedule yet. I thought that ending stocks at 560 it's a bad number. It's very big yet, but it could get bigger, I'm afraid, if demand doesn't pick up. Now, at the end of all this, it's just going to be how cheap do soybeans get to incentivize some buyers in the market, particularly China. Are they going to step in before the election and buy soybeans? Are they going to wait until after to see what kind of soybean crop we have and if they can use it as leverage? So that's what it'll come down to. However, at this point, I thought the corn balance sheet was incredibly favorable and forgiving. I thought the soybean balance sheet was bad, but it could get worse, Jesse, going forward. So, corn, in my eyes, looking at stocks to use ratio versus history, which I like to use as a gauge, that would suggest March corn futures should be right around $3.80 for this upcoming winter. We're at 415, 410 and change today. At this point, maybe corn doesn't need to take off a whole lot yet, which is better than where I was probably a month ago. I thought maybe December could get down to 350 based on old chart action, fundamentals. Still could, but I think we're in a lot more favorable of a position. Maybe bad as bad as it's going to get here in the next short term. 2014, we bottomed this market at the end of September. I'll be curious to see if we do it a little bit earlier this year or not. But those are a few of the things I'm watching. The soybeans, the soybeans are in a tough spot here near $9.50 again now, and on the board, and the future doesn't look incredibly bright. So I've leaned more towards some flexible strategies, let's just say, on the soybeans here lately.
Yeah, it's a tough conversation for grain producers. I would have to think that, though, for the livestock folks, just a couple comments there. I mean, cheaper prices here got to be favorable for cattle and hog producers to some degree here. Some of those margins, Mike?
To an extent, the hog market, we've had a little bit of a recovery, a couple weeks back that led to a little bit of taking some risk off because of improved margins, especially out in those summer months. We've been playing a lot of defense up until this point on the hog market. Now we've had some opportunities to step out our coverage into the summer and play some offense. However, at the same time, I mean, this drop in the corn market has been pretty simultaneous with the hog drop as well. Cattle, I mean, up front, sure, spot markets, we're still have very high cash prices. Further out, we started to see that drop at about the same time corn really fell apart. And some of those cattle have been incredibly expensive. So a lot of risk. I think producers have done a better job of taking risk off the table early here lately with these higher input costs. So we'll have to see on how the average cattle producer is sitting. But across all egg commodities, really, it's been a rough go here recently on the Bloomberg Commodity Index. And maybe we could see some short covering here if the equities get real dark again. But those are a few things I'm watching.
All right, Mike, if folks want to reach out to you, have a conversation about their marketing plan and more, where can they get in touch with you, Mike?
Yeah, give us a call at 507-449-2030 or go to our website at professionalagmarketing.com.
And I know you can find full crop tour results on their website as well, professionalagmarketing.com. With that, Mike Miner, Professional Ag Marketing, always good to chat with you, Mike. Thanks for being with us here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to Market Talk on YouTube or find us online at markettalkag.com. I'm Jesse Allen. Have a great afternoon.
Make sure to subscribe to the Market Talk YouTube channel. You can watch our latest interviews with top market analysts in the country, find bonus content, and much more. It's easy. Just go to youtube.com/@markettalkag and hit the subscribe button. Or you can search for Market Talk Ag on YouTube.